friends, it's Miss Jackie with the Waco-McLennan County Public Library, back with another full steam ahead program today where we're going to be doing an experiment with things we can find around the house, especially in our kitchen. So hopefully you all have these things handy because we're going to do something really, really cool. Now, especially this time of year, we start thinking about winter decorations. What are some of the things you think about when you think about winter? Do you think about it being cold? Do you think about snow and snowflakes? Well, if you answered yes, you're in luck today. So I'm going to show you how to make your very own salt crystal snowflake. And this is an example of the one that I did. See? You can see this. Now, with this salt crystal snowflake, we can hang this anywhere we want. And the salt crystals actually look like the snowflake and ice that can form out in nature. So we can do this in our very own home. So I'll show you how. All what you have to do is get like a little bowl or a plate. Doesn't have to be very deep. You'll need some water and some salt. And then if you don't have pipe cleaners at home, you can even use construction paper or something like that. It'll work just as well. But for our experiment today, since with my example, I did it with pipe cleaners, I'll show you how to do that. So this is going to be our long stem here, and we'll just make our little snowflake guy just like this. Doesn't have to be anything too fancy. All what we're trying to do is kind of just get him formed into a shape. So we'll do that here real fast. Just like that. Okay. And you can do yours however you like. Mine kind of looks like a bug at the moment. But that's okay. And you can make it as big or small as your container is able to take. So that should work just for now. So now that we have a shape formed, we're going to set that aside. Now in our bowl, what we're going to do is add just a little bit of water. Do this so that we make sure it doesn't spill. Okay. And then we're going to add a bunch of salt. Now that's what's going to help us form our crystal. So when I say a bunch of salt, guys, I mean a bunch of salt. And one of the things that might help this go in here faster and dissolve is if your water's warm. It doesn't have to be, but it's one of the things that will help. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to stir and stir. And as we see our salt dissolve, once it dissolves, we're going to need to add more salt. Now, some of you may have formed crystals before and used something called borax. Well, our experiment today isn't going to use borax because sometimes we may not have that handy in our homes. The other reason is that you really don't want to even accidentally eat borax, right guys? That would be bad. So what we're going to do is keep stirring and keep stirring. And when I tried this myself, I could not believe how much salt had to go in here. Now, you'll know when your solution is ready when the salt no longer dissolves. Now, you may need to wait 5 minutes or so in between times that you've added salt because sometimes even though we've stirred, the salt won't dissolve right away. But what's really important, here's the key guys, is that we put enough salt in so that it stops forming, okay? And I'll explain why in just a minute. Once we have our salt solution ready, we're just gonna put our snowflake design right inside the salt, just like that. And then I'm just gonna tuck him over there. Now, what I'll also do to help kind of seed it along is add more salt over the top of our ornament, just like this. All right, now, what is gonna happen here is that salt crystals are gonna form as the water evaporates. Now, I hate to say it, with this project that we're doing, it's not gonna happen in one night. For me, when I tried it, it took nearly 3 days. But the fun of this experiment is that you can keep checking on it and watch it as it develops. So as you can see with our example here, all that we have left is the salt inside the bowl. There's no more water left. So I had about as much water as I used today for our experiment. And then about 3 days later, this is what happened. And in the end, you have an ornament like this. Now you can also see that the salt crystals on our little snowflake here are also larger than the salt crystals when they first went into our bowl. So there's a reason for this. So we'll talk about the science now. Okay, so you want to know what is going on. All right, so let's talk about this. Salt itself is made up of 2 different atoms. One is sodium and the other one is chlorine. Now, when these 2 get together, they form salt. So that's like a compound atom. They come together. Now, when we put that in water, it allows those 2 atoms to break apart. So the molecules break apart. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that it is soluble. And what solubility is, basically, is the ability for a solution to break 2 things apart. So it dissolves in the water. That's why what we really have is something like salt water. And you can see salt water out in the ocean. For example, long time ago, people couldn't go to the grocery store and buy salt for their food, but they also didn't have refrigerators or freezers. So their food would go bad pretty quickly. Nobody wants to eat spoiled food. But what people a long time ago figured out is if you can take the water from the ocean, lay it out so that all of the water evaporates from sun or the atmosphere, out of what was left in the ocean, you get salt crystals. Now, something cool that salt does besides flavor our food is it preserves things. So that was one way that people not only seasoned their food, but also preserved it when they didn't have refrigerators and freezers and things like that today. You also may have eaten, some dried out food like maybe beef jerky, and not quite the same thing, but it's about the closest we can think of, from what people a long time ago may have eaten and how they preserved their food, especially if they were going on long trips and things like that. Now, what happened with the water when we were talking about, the salt doesn't dissolve anymore? Well, what we did is we created something called a saturated solution. That meant that the water couldn't absorb any more of those salt crystals to dissolve them. And that's the point that we needed to get to. So what was really going on here? Well, in chemistry, we call something an ionic bond, which is a chemical bond that occurs between these atoms and molecules. So I hope you learned a little bit about that today and about how important things like salt would be for preserving our food long time ago, and also how people a long time ago could even make salt. So essentially, what they would have after taking the water out of the ocean is this. And this is perfectly edible, guys. I don't know if I'd recommend it myself, since we can go to the store. But it's a nice solution. So, hope you enjoyed today's project and thinking that you could do it yourself. And just like we use pipe cleaners, I mentioned earlier, you could use construction paper, maybe try a variety of different materials, maybe some I haven't even thought of, and see if you could also get your salt to go into this completely evaporated solution like this, and see if you can get the crystals to form nice and large on whatever you use. So be really interested to see if you try something new. If you want to comment and let us know what you did, that would be really awesome. But in the meantime, we would love it if you liked our videos and subscribed to our YouTube channel, where we're going to be doing this experiment and other fun experiments too. So until next week, when we meet again, we'll say goodbye, friends, and hope you have fun with your experiments. Have a great day.